Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a busy manager or executive, you are constantly juggling high-stakes projects, right? But it turns out there is a massive trap we all naturally fall into. Have you ever noticed how often we get totally stuck in the research phase of a project? Telling ourselves we just need to read one more market report, or glance at one more competitor analysis, or review just one more data set before we actually do anything? Well, today we're going to explore how that endless gathering is actually a highly sophisticated form of procrastination, and exactly how we can shift our mindset from total overload to high-level execution.
I want you to really think about this for a second. How many unread browser tabs, PDF reports, or industry deep dives are literally sitting open on your computer right now? We all promise ourselves we'll get to them later, but notice how just looking at all that digital clutter actually drains your energy. It feels heavy, doesn't it? It just sits there in the background of your mind like a massive pile of unfinished homework. And honestly, that draining feeling is a primary symptom of the exact trap we're breaking down today.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover the executive preparation trap, the illusion of progress, symptoms of cognitive overload, the just-in-time strategy, and we'll wrap up with the input-limiting workflow. Let's jump right in.
Starting off with Section 1, the executive preparation trap. To really get why we get stuck, we have to look at the baseline reality for modern leaders.
We live in an era where the answer to literally any question is just a few clicks away. But that limitless access to data, reports, and tutorials, it's quietly sabotaging your ability to actually do the work. Now, on paper, having all these answers at your fingertips sounds like a massive advantage, but in practice, it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. Our brains actually have strict biological limits. Your working memory can realistically only juggle about 4 to 7 pieces of new information at once. So bombarding those biological limits with a constant flood of data literally jams your mental circuits. Just imagine a manager staring blankly at a 50-page Q3 market analysis while their team is standing by just waiting for a simple yes or no decision. The data isn't helping them, it's quietly paralyzing them.
And that brings us to information paralysis. This is a state of cognitive overload, where the brain is no longer capable of synthesizing details, resulting in a total loss of your ability to act. What's absolutely crucial to understand here is that this is a biological overload, not a lack of willpower. When you hit this point, your brain simply cannot synthesize the complex details it's being fed, and you entirely lose the ability to pull the trigger on a decision. So give yourself some grace. It isn't a lack of motivation or drive. Your mental hardware is simply overloaded from way too many inputs.
Moving on to Section 2, the illusion of progress. Let's see how this overload actually tricks your brain, making this trap so incredibly dangerous.
You know the feeling. Gathering data feels exactly like working. Spending 4 hours researching a new strategy gives your brain a nice, rewarding little hit of dopamine. It feels productive, and honestly, it feels safe. But in reality, your brain is using safe consumption as a defense mechanism to avoid the risks of taking real action. The execution phase involves risk. It's messy. You're putting your reputation on the line, and yeah, you might get it wrong. The research phase, on the other hand, feels entirely safe from failure. So we end up substituting safe consumption for risky action, and we dress the whole thing up as just being prepared.
Which leads us to a pretty uncomfortable truth. Learning too much without applying it is actually keeping you a beginner. Think about it. If we're just accumulating knowledge, stacking up theoretical frameworks, and reading endless case studies without ever putting any of it to the test in the real world, we aren't advancing our projects. We aren't being effective executives. We're just hiding behind information. Which leads us right into Section 3, symptoms of cognitive overload. What actually happens when we force our minds to carry all this theoretical weight without an outlet?
Medical experts note that an overloaded mind eventually just stops caring about the outcome. It just wants to find relief. And this manifests in 3 distinct destructive behaviors for any leader. First is paralysis. The issue becomes so complex that you avoid your desk entirely. Second is anger or irritability. You might find yourself snapping at your team or feeling deeply frustrated when new data challenges what you thought you knew, simply because you're overwhelmed by all your own mental tabs. And third is passivity. When forging your own path feels too heavy, you just surrender your choices to the crowd. Like just copying a competitor's strategy because it's literally the easiest way to cope with an exhausted mind.
To put it simply, endless research leads to cognitive overload, which forces paralysis, frustration, or passivity, none of which allow you to create or decide. As a manager or an executive, your absolute primary value to your organization is your ability to make decisions and generate momentum. You are there to lead, not to read endlessly. These overloaded states completely strip you of your ability to do that high-level work. Okay, so how do we fix this? Let's pivot to the strategic resolution in Section 4, the just-in-time strategy.
This requires a massive mindset shift. We have to stop gathering messy future knowledge. That's what's called just-in-case learning, where you try to memorize step 10 of a project before you've even finished step 1. Because your brain has no immediate framework to actually use that information, it just turns into mental clutter. Instead, you need to strictly limit yourself to just-in-time learning. This means researching only the immediate next bottleneck in front of you. If you don't need the information today to make today's decision, you do not research it today.
Let's make this super practical right now. Think about a massive project or executive decision you are currently avoiding. Got it? Okay, what is the absolute, very next, single physical step you need to take? I'm not talking about the 5-year plan here or some comprehensive Q4 projection. I mean literally the next click of the mouse or the next email you need to draft. Identify that single step, learn only what is required to execute it, and immediately execute.
And finally, Section 5, the input limiting workflow. Let's outline a practical workflow to minimize your daily input overload so you can actually pull this off.
You really need to adopt this mindset shift today to force yourself out of endless preparation. Your new goal is to start before you feel ready. Let me say that again. If you feel 100% prepared to begin, you waited far too long. In a fast-paced corporate world, perfect certainty is a luxury we simply cannot afford. If you feel perfectly ready, the opportunity has probably already passed you by.
So how do we actually force ourselves into this workflow? Try this strict 4-step framework. First, set a hard timer, say 15 minutes for your research phase. Second, pick one trusted source so you don't fall down an endless internet rabbit hole. Third, externalize your notes. Physically dump the problem onto paper. Seeing the problem physically outside of your head stops your brain from spinning and forces prioritization over perfection. And finally, step 4. When that 15-minute timer rings, execute with whatever you have.
Bottom line, we've got to stop letting endless tutorials and data gathering trick us into feeling productive. Close the tabs, put the notebook away. You have to trust your existing expertise, limit your inputs, and embrace the fact that the first step is going to be messy. Take it anyway.
Which leaves us with this ultimate question. Are you ready to organize your brain, limit your inputs, and find your exact next step today? Think about that big, complex project stalling on your desk right now. When you get back to work, are you going to open another tab to research it safely, or will you embrace the risk and take your messy first step today? The choice is yours.